Welcome back, it's me, Lou. Today will be a special double feature as we focus on two different versions of the character Black Adam. Alright, so on our left we have the standard DC Multiverse Black Adam. This is part of a collect to build wave, and this is piece number 4 of 4 to complete the Frost King. This is Black Adam as he appears in the comic book series Justice League Endless Winter. And on our right, we have the DC Page Punchers Black Adam as he appears in the special comic book Black Adam. And then here is what the exclusive comic book looks like. This is the cover. Beautiful artwork by, I believe, done by Lee Bermejo. Both of these are larger boxes than your standard McFarlane DC figure. This one's slightly taller because of the comic book. As you can see, they're both Black Adam, but different iterations of the character. And there's also two other McFarlane Black Adam figures that are currently in stores. It's for the new live-action Black Adam movie starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. There's a hooded Black Adam and then an unhooded one. So altogether, I think you have 4 different versions of Black Adam floating around out there. So I mean, you know, if you're like a diehard collector, chances are you'll get all of them. You know, if you had to narrow it to just like down to 1 or 2, I hope this video kind of like better informs you so you can make that decision. All right, so let's get started. So I'm going to attempt to do a side-by-side comparison as we go through this video. So at the same time, you know, we can take a look simultaneously at the pros and cons of each figures, you know, the similarities and the differences. Alright, so for the DC Multiverse figure, much like other figures, you're getting the trading card and the display base. With the Page Punchers, you're getting the exclusive Black Adam comic book, the trading card, and the display base. Okay, so first impressions of both figures in the tray. They look great. As you can see, they both come with like energy effects. We have these kind of like very light electric blue looking effects. They're kind of held down with plastic ties, but you get the point. The material feels a little bit harder than the Marvel Legends style energy effects, which I think is a good thing. The Marvel Legends ones are cool, but they're kind of a little bit too soft. I'd like these. These feel a little bit stiffer. You have the Frost King's Build-A-Figure legs over here, and then we have our action figures. So let's get the figures out, because that's what we're here for. If you watched my videos before, I like despise these plastic ties. I think they're a little bit excessive. I think all they really need is just the one around the chest or waist. I don't know why they have to do every limb. Okay, so let's begin. So immediately after handling both figures, as I was taking them out, the texture on this one, it kind of reminded me of the King Shazam figure. You know, with the texture on the uniform. And this also, I know this is kind of an issue with some fans. There was I think it was a Walmart exclusive Shazam figure. And then they kind of had a similar thing where the lightning bolt on the chest, it's not, you know, kind of breaks away from the torso right here. I think most fans would have preferred it if they kept that isolated just to like the one movable piece, as opposed to, like, you know, lengthening out and having it flap around like this. It doesn't bother me all that much, you know, so I don't think it's a deal breaker for me. This guy here, I love the texture on his cape, and we'll get to that in a little bit. Very cool looking version of Shazam. I like this guy a lot. I like the fact that he has the tattered cape, and the appearance is definitely a much older looking version. I think, just to begin with, if you're familiar with the Injustice video games, I want to say that the characters are slightly older than how they're generally perceived in the storyline. So, yeah, so far we have two great looking figures. Let's take a look at them up close. As you can see with the faces, there's different shades for the flesh tones. This one is a little bit more on the yellow side for the flesh tone. He has grayer hair. The sculpting on the head it's fantastic. It looks great. He kind of has the pointed ears like Black Adam does. It almost looks like, if you're familiar with Star Trek, this almost kind of resembles Ambassador Sarek, Spock's Vulcan father. And he kind of has, if you look at his face, he kind of has like that grimace where he's like, I don't know, it looks like he's partially annoyed, skeptical. You know, if you read the comic books, Black Adam's kind of, he's not a ray of sunshine. So, and much like the other figure also, this guy kind of has that flap with the lightning bolt, but it's a lot shorter. I don't think this is going to bother people too much. I love the shade of gold also. It looks great. This guy here, his head, my first thought when I was looking at him, he kind of looks like the Marvel character Namor. You know, he also has the pointed ears, and with the slicked back hair with the blue highlights, it just looks like Namor to me. So, this one looks cool too. This looks like a much more arrogant looking face. And if you read the comic books, you know, Black Adam, he's a very arrogant character. He has kind of like a hint of eyeshadow also. And here's a side-by-side comparison of both faces. Like I said, the Page Punchers here is slightly older in appearance. The Lightning Bolt's also different designs as well. This one is a little bit more stock and standard. This one's a little bit more dynamic. This one has a much larger gold border around the lightning bolt, whereas this one's border just frames the lightning bolt perfectly. You know, the obvious difference also is, you know, this guy is decked out with more armor. If you've played the Injustice video games, you know, the character... Oh, God, this isn't... Or I take it back. This is not... For some reason, I was going to say... I don't think this is how he's portrayed in the video game Injustice. I think it's more so that, like, in the exclusive comic book. So just kind of ignored anything I said about the Injustice video game. But for the most part, this guy, you know, the big obvious difference is that he's decked out in more armor. Definitely a lot more armor. Bulkier armor as well. The shades of gold, you'll notice, is very different too. Over here, the gold is a lot more yellow and a lot more rich. This one, it looks a little bit more metallic than this one. Yeah, so the gold finish is different. Likewise, the shade of black on the costumes are slightly different as well. You might not be able to see it on camera, but this one's black is a little bit more on like the blue tinted side, where this one's black is a little bit more, you know, tinted on the gray side. In terms of their stature and their anatomy, this one seems more bulky. This one definitely has much more of a bodybuilder build, and that's not to take away from this guy either. This guy's bulked out too, but this guy has a giant chest, so this guy has more weight to him. This guy also has the gold tights over his pants, whereas this guy does not. A beautiful tattered cape with a nice micro texture. As you can see, the texture throughout, very realistic fold lines, and there's the impression of his hood over here. It's tattered towards the bottom, you know. And the one thing I do like about this cape is that it's kind of short, it's not too long, and it's very neutral. And when I say neutral, it's just coming straight down. It's not a cape that's overextended or too long or flowing in the wind. I like it how it's just, you know, very neutral and just kind of in a basic, you know, pose, you know, if you will. I like how the cape kind of like piles up on the shoulders. It makes his shoulders look a lot larger than they are. And you'll also notice too that in terms of the neckline, this guy's collar wraps towards the base of the neck, whereas this one, his neck is much more exposed, especially with his shoulders also. This guy here looks to be a little bit more regal than this one over here. This guy definitely feels more like a rogue villain. You know, he feels a little bit more sinister. This guy kind of feels like, you know, the fall from Grace King. You know, that's the kind of look that this one kind of portrays. You'll also notice too, in terms of their hands, this guy has double fists. This guy has the fist, and he kind of has the gnarled fingers over here. So, right, to be honest, right now, as I'm handling both these figures, I think I'm warming up to this one a lot more. This figure here is great. If you look at it, you know, it's well detailed. The facial sculpt is well done. The texturing on the uniform is great. You know, this looks really, really cool. And in many ways, like I mentioned earlier, it feels very familiar. Like if you've handled the I think the Walmart exclusive Shazam and the King Shazam figure, you know, I think you're gonna feel at home with this figure. You know, there's kind of a lot of key points that are very similar in its design. So this one's cool. I think this is kind of this kind of borders more on the traditional comic book one minus the cape. I like this one a lot because, you know, as I'm handling it, there's something very, I don't know, I almost want to say anime inspired. Like my first impression when I was looking at this guy, I think in the box, he kind of reminded me of like an anime character from the very old anime Record of Lodoss War. And Record of Lodoss War was kind of like a medieval fantasy anime. Lots of knights in like heavy armor, much like this. And the really broad chest and the large pauldron pieces up here just kind of took me back to that. And not only that, but the way his face is kind of cut and sculpted, you know, it's a little bit more angular. And for me, that just feels a little bit more like on the like video game, anime, comic book side. So I do like this one a lot. I like this very like stylized look. I think it's really cool. It's a very dynamic looking character without doing a lot. You know, it's not like, you know, even if the guy's just standing in here in a neutral pose, there's just something about him that just conveys so much like energy. You know, this is a really cool looking figure. But, you know, there's something to be said about this one too. If you're more about the traditional Black Adam, this might be the way to go. And let's do a final pass of the details. So here's from the waist up. Here's a profile. As you can see, this guy's a lot bulkier. Here's their backs, the legs. And then let's go over the ever important articulation of both figures. We'll cover this guy first. So this guy's head rotates left and right. Does he look down? Looks down about that much. Looking up, I'm going to guess no, because if you look here, the way his hair is cut, it looks like the tail end of his hair is going to hit his shoulder. And I'd be right. Doesn't look up. His arms rotate. They go outward. He has the ball-socketed butterfly joint, so extended range of motion. Bicep cut right there. Double pinned elbows. He has the ball jointed wrist, and the ball joint, it's kind of covered up by the wrist guard there, which is nice. It's not overly exposed. He has a cut mid torso, and you can see it right there. Allows him to swivel, kind of rock a little. He can swivel at the waist as well. He could kick up about that much, kick out. Does not do the full splits, if you're wondering. Double pinned knees, it's very stock, very standard. Ankle articulation and toe articulation. So it checks all the boxes in terms of like the standard McFarlane articulation. It'd be nice if he came with a pair of flight hands, because this is a dude that could fly. And unfortunately, his head doesn't want to look up, so I think that's kind of a point against him. But since he does arch back, you could kind of get him in a semi-flight pose. So if you want to pretend he's flying, there you go. Yeah, so very solid figure. For this guy, if I had to rate this guy numerically on a scale of 1 to 10, my first thought is an 8. Visually, it looks like what it should look like. I think the only thing that hurts it is the articulation. It'd be nice if you could arch his head back, and it would have been even better if they gave him an extra pair of hands. I think having 2 fists is all right, but, I think they could have done a little bit more with it. Up next, we have this guy. Let's take a look at this guy's articulation. His head rotates left and right. Does he look down? He does look down. Does he look up? He looks up just a hair, not too much. His arms do rotate, but they're going to hit the shoulder pauldron up there, so it's going to stop. If you're wondering how this is attached, it's attached like this. It looks like an extended tab. If I had to guess, I think it might be glued under the cape, which it might be right there. But it does afford movement to go outward like this. Bicep cut, I believe, right there. Double pinned elbows. And even though the joint cuts into the bicep, I don't think it's that. I don't know. I don't think it's that. Normally I complain about this stuff because I don't like the joint cutting into the bicep, because sometimes it looks unsightly, especially if the character is like a bare fleshed arm. But this one, I think the texture on the body armor kind of hides it pretty well. As you can see, double pinned elbows. And with the wrist, this guy is pretty cool. Cut mid-torso, so much like the other figure, he could like swivel and rock. Swivel at the waist, kicks out. Not as much as I'd like. He doesn't kick forward all that much, because if you look here, his briefs are kind of overextended over the thigh, and it kind of prevents it from kicking forward, so it's kind of limited. Kicks out. This guy closer to the splits than the other figure. There's slight thigh movement here, so you can slightly swivel it. Double pinned knees. much like the other figure. And like the other figure, you have ankle articulation, toe articulation. You know, if you want to get this guy in like a punching pose. So the articulation feels very stock, very standard for McFarlane figure. You know, it's nothing to write home about. The cape material here, it's a little bit thicker than I'd like. It's not as heavy or as thick as some capes, but at the same time, it's not as thin and as pliable as I'd like it to be. But for me, it's forgivable just because it's a smaller cape. It's shorter. It's not flowing around. This is a figure I would love to see them re-release with the hood. Like, the hood over here is folded down, but I'd love to get a figure, this exact same figure, but with a hooded design. I think hooded Black Adam's a pretty cool looking character. If I had to rate this guy on a scale of 1 to 10, for me, visually, I think he's perfect. There's something about the way everything about this character just screams, look at me. It's very, very, I don't know, it's very intimidating. He has a sense of authority about him. Visually, I think he's a 10. In terms of his articulation, you know, these kind of get in the way, but for me, it's not too much. Much like the other figure, I would prefer if he came with, like, you know, extra hands, like flying hands or whatever. And also, one thing I noticed, I'm not sure if this is the design of the costume, but it kind of bothers me how his boots aren't completely gold. Unless this is how it appears in the comic book. You know, if he has black ankles in the comic, that's cool, but it feels a little bit disjointed. I think I'd prefer it if the design had the ankles gold also. It just it's just kind of like an odd look, because it looks like these are more like shin guards as opposed to boots. So, but that's just you know, a minor personal quibble. Otherwise, I think this is a great figure. Now, if I had to choose only one Black Adam figure out of these two, I'm easily going to go with this guy. I think the Page Punchers one, for me, it's a much more unique look, and I just like this one a lot. If you're more of a traditionalist on the comic book end, this one does a pretty good job of embodying, you know, like New 52 Rebirth Black Adam. The New 52 design, I think it was different more so. I think he was much like Shazam in New 52. I think he had the cape and also the hood. Rebirth might be just strictly without the cape and all that. But this is a cool figure. I think this is great. But if you know, if I only had to choose one, I'd go with this guy. This figure for me, this looks incredibly well done. And it's, I don't know, I just like this look a lot. I think it's really cool. I'm very fond of characters that kind of look like this. Like, there's something about this design that kind of reminds me of, like, Magneto. Alright, so with that being said, hope this better informs you onto which figure you might prefer. Wrapping this up, my name is Lou. If you are new to my channel, welcome. If you are a returning viewer or subscriber, thank you so much for your continued support. I greatly appreciate it. So, until the next video, be safe, take care of yourself, buy lots of toys, and most importantly, be happy. And I'll see you at the next one. Alright, later.